What is up, you guys? I am currently live on TikTok. I'm going to be answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts. So let's see what questions the people have for us today. If you guys want your own personalized natal chart reading or progressed natal chart reading, all of that is going to be in the description box below on the YouTube page. And then you'll go on my website under readings. And that is how you guys can get your own reading. Eclipses were hardcore. Yes, they were definitely intense, and it definitely felt like we were in a vortex. As soon as it was done, it was like a relief. And then Saturn went direct. So it's like, honestly, it's been very much like relief energy-wise. But yeah, they definitely maximized on the eclipses. Like that energy was intense. It felt like we were sucked into a vortex. That's how it felt like for me. You said budgeting for a trip and money. Oh, that's amazing. You said, you know, things will get better. You're impatient for improvement. Yes, I feel you with that one. Everything takes a really long time down here on this earth plane. Yes, I totally feel you with that. That is something that is like, what's the word? Like you really have to learn on this earth plane is that patience and that things take time and like all these types of things. Thanks so much for the likes, you guys. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts, or we can talk about any topic in that realm. You said, how many lessons of the universe God want you to learn? I know, I feel you with that one. You know, it's funny, I was thinking about that recently and I was like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I feel like I've learned, you know what I mean? I was like, you know, sometimes at some point, I feel like it's just like the pattern energy in your energetic imprint that kind of keeps sending you the same things over and over again. And I really feel like you can just energetically be like, I don't want to participate in this anymore. That's kind of like where I'm at, because it's like, I think some things, because of the energetic imprint, especially in terms of like the astrological imprint we have and like the coding, if that makes sense, it keeps repeating. It's like on an energetic loop. And I think part of like the whole thing is to just not feed into it anymore. And it's just kind of like, you know what? I am not going to repeat this, whatever it is, the same situation over and over again, same type of person, these types of things. So I do feel like we can energetically be like, no thanks, you know, I'm done here. Scorpio, any advice? Yeah, Scorpio is intense energetically, okay? So Scorpio goes through a lot. They go through a lot of trauma. They go through a lot of darkness. They go through a lot of like death, rebirth, like, you know, it's really, really intense when you are a Scorpio or just like a Scorpionic person overall. They see through everything. They're super intuitive, super psychic. I do have a playlist on Scorpio energy, okay? So if any of you guys are interested, you guys can check that out. It's going to be on my YouTube channel called Barbara Talks. It is called Scorpio/A House Energy, and I talk about the energy in there. So many videos on Scorpio energy because I could talk about it for days. There's just so much to say because it's like Scorpio deals with the undercurrents of energy. It deals with like manipulation, energetic manipulation, especially in terms of like feminine energy, regardless of whatever gender you were born into. So there's a lot to transmute, you know, for Scorpionic people. It's really, really interesting. And also if you have Scorpio placements, you're probably hit by the eclipses as well. You said you were feeling that a lot. You're not a Scorpio, but you have a North Node and Pluto in the 6th. You've been up and down. You said all in Scorpio. Where do you have your North Node and Pluto in Scorpio and it's in the 6th house? Yeah, it's been intense because it's like, not only is it like the energy is, yes, I am. Definitely check out my YouTube channel. It's called Barbara Talks. Barbara Talks is my YouTube channel. Yeah, okay, so you're saying that it is North Node and Pluto and you have it in Scorpio and it's in the 6th house. Yeah, so basically, oops, whoever I invited, I didn't mean to invite you, but yeah, it's been intense because it's like, it is basically opposing the energy of, what's it called? The eclipses, right? So we had the eclipse in Taurus and then that's opposing you. So it's like, it's really bringing things to the surface. And it's just unfortunate because it's like, no matter how much you try to avoid it, you can't avoid it. And then also what's unfortunate is like more people keep connecting their energies to these energies, like the celestial, like whatever you want to call it, energies. So it's like, it makes it even more intense. Let's see, Libra, any advice? Yes, Libra is going to be indecisive. Depends where you have it in your natal chart, but you might struggle with people pleasing. You might struggle with like lack of boundaries or always looking for the one or like a best friend or like a buddy. Libra struggles with these things, okay? I've noticed Libra can sometimes speak in like double speak as well. So it's like from every perspective, they end up being right. And it's so interesting because just before this live, I was thinking like Libra can literally kind of make sense of anything. So that's why they do end up being really good in law because they can kind of see it from all perspectives, you know, where it's like this makes sense and then that makes sense, and you know, they end up winning because they can deliver it. You're going to be really, really good at debates. Thank you for the follows. Check out my YouTube channel, you guys. If you're new here, it's called Barbara Talks. Let's see what else you guys think in here. Neptune square ascendant. Yeah, Neptune on the ascendant is really, really interesting because it's like any sort of Neptunian influence on the ascendant, you don't see yourself clearly. You don't see who you are clearly. You might either underestimate yourself or overestimate like yourself as a person. Those are things that can take place. You might physically not see yourself clearly. So it's like, again, there's that underestimating energy because Neptune is blurring the ascendant. It's blurring your first house, right? And your first house is who you are, right? It's kind of like, this is me and this is what I'm here to do. But it's like, let's say you might underestimate your physical appearance in the sense where it's like you might be better looking than you think that you are, right? Like these types of things. So that's Neptune squaring the ascendant. Any Neptunian influence on the ascendant, you don't see yourself clearly. You don't see your personality clearly. So you might deal with like self-worth types of things and these types of things, okay? That's Neptune square the ascendant. You're saying Neptune in the 10th house. What does that say about your parents? Interesting. So that means... So that's going to be opposing your 4th house. That's really, really interesting because it's like the 4th house. I mean, the 10th house, I guess, can deal in a way with like the father. The 4th house is the home overall and it's the mother. So there's something here that you don't see clearly, right? When it comes to authority, when it comes to people in places of power, managers, all these types of people, okay? People who are in those dominant masculine roles. And it's interesting because now it's opposing your 4th house, okay? And then it also kind of blurs the area of your public image, okay? That's Neptune in the 10th house. That like, first of all, you don't know what you want to do for work. You don't see this area clearly. You might struggle with like picking what you want to do. It might take you a while to actually come into your career or what you want to do for work because you spend so much time wanting to do everything. That's the struggle with Neptune in the 10th house. Welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal chart. So feel free to comment below. I'm just going in order. So that's Neptune in the 10th house, okay? You don't see this area clearly. And then in turn, you don't see your own like public image clearly. So it's like when you're on social media, right? You might kind of like, you know, like not portray maybe what you want to be portraying because it's blurring, right? Neptune is blurring this particular area. So that's the thing because it's like, it's now going to be conjuncting your midheaven, right? So it's like anything to do with your job and your public image and your career and your vocation, like all these things, it's not being seen clearly. Hey, welcome to everyone joining. Fairy Goddess, you said you have Pisces with Saturn in the 10th house. Any advice for the Saturn and Pisces transit? Yeah, you're probably going to be changing your career. And also, like, anytime you're kind of going through, like, 4th house, 10th house axis, like, there's always something karmic that comes up, like, regarding the home or regarding the mother, or in this case, because it is the 10th house, it could be your father. But basically regarding this axis, okay, of home, public life. Because the whole thing is, with the 4th house, 10th house axis, it's like, if there's something here that's not resolved in terms of the 4th house, you're going to struggle to put yourself out there, right? To the public in whatever way that is. It doesn't just have to be like being a public person. It can just be you in your job or you interacting with like the day-to-day people. So that's kind of what's happening in there. So it's interesting because Saturn in the 10th house is actually a wealth placement, okay? And then you're usually blessed with wealth in the second half of your life when you have Saturn in the 10th house. So it's something that you can kind of look at it as you're working toward it. So with Saturn and Pisces kind of going through this transit for you right now, it's like you're basically clearing. You can look at it as any remnants that are in the way of your public life, maybe even your money. So because it is on that axis, 10th house, 4th house, like what you can do is you can kind of see like what are belief systems that took place within the home, within that 4th house that could be holding you back from your public life, from your career, okay? From the money, from the wealth, from climbing, right? The 10th house is climbing, okay? This is the midheaven, is that highest point in the natal chart. This is in the Placidus Western system. So that's the whole thing here. So it's like, what a lot of people don't get, especially with the 4th house, 10th house axis, is like, for you to get to the 10th house, you have to go, first of all, through all of the previous houses. There's lessons in the previous houses, but it's like, if there's something there in the 4th house that took place, which is the upbringing, the childhood, the home, that's unresolved, well then it's directly opposing this, right? So now you have Saturn in here, you know? So it's interesting to see because you want to see what do you have in your IC. Let me know if you have Virgo in your IC. I'm actually curious. You said funny because you're finishing your MBA in February. Something told you that you would need to increase, that you would need it to increase your earning potential. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That is amazing. Congratulations. Yeah, see, that's really, really interesting because it's like, that's very Saturnian, you know, because it's like you are going through school, you know, you're going through something that takes time. and effort. Like that's kind of Saturn. I see the earth plane as very Saturnian, okay? So yes, you know, we have Taurus influence, we have Virgo influence in their own ways, but to me, earth is very, very Saturnian. You know, you have to go through this system to get, you know, an education, to maybe get more money. Like that's kind of how it is down here. So it's really, really interesting that you're completing it during your Saturn return. No worries. Let me go back up to what you were saying. Let's see. You said North Node is transiting your 12th house and you're getting assessed for autism and other things. Oh, very, very interesting. Hey, you're Sophia Karma. You said Aries, Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars in the 4th house. That's so interesting. See, everything that I was saying about the 4th house, 10th house axis, this is a very good example. You know, when I would look at a chart like this, when I see the congestion of 4th house energy, and now it's opposing your 10th house energy, well, in this situation, there's this whole picture now that's taking place, because it's like 4th house, when you have 4th house in your natal chart, you can also kind of look at it as karmic things through the home, through the family line, okay? Usually through the maternal line, because it is the 4th house, but you can just look at it as a home overall. You can look at it as the feminine energy overall, okay? So all this stuff is happening in your 4th house and it's opposing your 10th house. So interestingly enough, you also have Saturn in the 10th, and then you have your midheaven, Pluto, and Jupiter all in the 10th. That's really interesting because that is like all wealth right there, but there's like a karma here to break through when it comes to the father and like authoritative figures. So you might be someone who might want to like run your own business, and then you might have run into like issues with like managers or like people who are in like roles above you, but it's like all of that is stemming from the home. Maybe, oh, and that's interesting too, because you have Aries in the 4th, and then you have Libra in the 10th, which is really, really also interesting to me, because it's like, it kind of suggests that like your home life was more masculine energy leaning, and then when you're presenting yourself out into the world, it's more feminine energy. So there's a lot of balancing here that's taking place between like the identity, relationships, and that's all directly correlated to the home. Let's see. Welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal chart. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Aries, Sun, Mercury. Also, what I will say for Aries energy overall is that Aries energy is here to start a new cycle. Thank you for the gifts, Fairy Goddess. So Aries is here to start a new cycle for themselves, like within their own soul's path, but also within the family line. So there could also be karma here. Again, when we see like the abundance of 4th house energy, there could be karma here where it's like maybe the whole family did a certain type of career, or maybe they took a certain type of path. You come through and you're meant to break through that, okay? So you can kind of look at the 4th house, like when you have the abundance of 4th house, there's a lot of generational things, belief systems that you're kind of breaking through to get to the end results, which is the reward, which is that 10th house, okay? Let's see what else you guys saying in here. Your IC is actually in Leo. You said that's so relieving because you know you're meant to have money and you've been struggling. Yeah, so anytime you have Saturn in the 10th house, it's karmic, okay? So by karmic, it's like Saturn's making you work, okay? So usually, like in traditional astrology, they would say after the age of 35, okay, you would start to kind of see the rewards of Saturn or see like the lessons kind of coming into fruition. You know, everything's happening sooner these days because the frequency of the planet is higher, so maybe it'll happen sooner, that Saturn placement for people. But it's like wherever you have Saturn in your natal chart, it's karma, right? So you're karmically resolving that in this lifetime. So Saturn in the 10th is a wealth placement, but usually these people tend to, sometimes they are wealthy in the earlier part of their life. You will see that depending on the rest of the natal chart, but overall, like Saturn in the 10th as like an overall placement, that energy is usually the second half of life, okay? So you tend to become well-known maybe in your career or whatever your niche is or whatever it is that you're doing. Like you tend to make a lot of money. It's something that you're climbing, right? Because you guys have to look at the 10th house as something that you are climbing toward, okay? You are climbing toward this thing, this goal, because it's kind of like the top of the mountain, right? It's the top of the natal chart, you know? So at the 10th house, there's a few things you guys can kind of do to, I guess, activate that energy, right? You guys can look at the 4th house, like I mentioned, see what's happening in the 4th house in the home, especially if it's like Saturn in the 10th. Okay, well, maybe there's karmic belief systems when it came to money that you're kind of transmuting. Maybe something like this, okay? Also, what you can do is you can look at the 9th house, okay? So the 9th house is going to tell you the people and types of people you're learning from, okay? So whatever sign you have in there, basically to activate the midheaven, which is in the 10th house, you have to go through the 9th house to get to the 10th house, okay? So that's the whole thing. It's kind of like a journey, right? You're going through the houses to get to that goal is really what that is, okay? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that that resonated. You're welcome. Live your fantasy. Let me know which part do you want to know about. You said I see in Leo in the 3rd and you have Chiron in Virgo in the 4th house. Any idea? So you have IC. That's interesting. Are you looking at whole signs? Because IC is usually in the 4th house when I look at it in the Placidus Western system. But IC is usually the 4th house because IC is going to tell you all about your home, your upbringing. It's going to tell you how you are in private. It'll give you the undertone energy of like a moon sign for you. So for example, when you have Virgo in the 4th house, the undertone moon energy for you is Virgo, okay? So that's what you guys can do as well. You have the moon placement, but then you can also see your 4th house and see what's happening in the 4th house, and that gives you the undertone of another moon energy, right? So it's like, let's say someone has a Scorpio moon, right? Well, if you have 4th house and something else, it can kind of soften that Scorpio moon energy, or it can make it a little bit more intense. So that's what you kind of have to look at everything in a natal chart. You said a whole sign, at least on the Chani app. You're also the one with the flipped north node and south node, so it's weird. Saturn conjunct your IC. Yes, Saturn conjunct your IC and is opposing your moon. Does that get better with age? Yeah, so it's interesting. The conversation today is very much about Saturn. So Saturn, yes, it gets better with age because you learn the lessons that Saturn brings you. Saturn operates in 7-year cycles, okay? And it's really interesting because one time I was thinking and I was like, this is where the 7-year itch saying comes from, right? Because it's like everything, I'm not gonna say everything. I can't say everything is like, you know, a karmic cycle, but when you look at, you know, let's say like someone got into a relationship and then they dated and then after 7 years they broke up, well, in that case, it was probably a karmic cycle. Recently, actually, someone told me that they dated someone for 7 years, okay, boom, karmic, right? And then after 7 years, they got married for another 7 years, and then they divorced. Obviously, with my mind, right away, I'm like, that is Saturnian, right? So I would like to look at that person's natal chart to see that it overlap with their Saturn transits, because Saturn operates in 7-year cycles, okay? So every 7 years, you go through some sort of Saturn transit, okay? It's either your Saturn return, the square, and then opposition. So that's Saturn. So as you grow and as you mature, because Saturn rewards maturity, everything to do with Saturn becomes easier. So people freak out about Saturn, but basically like the way you can benefit from Saturn is like putting in hard work, you know, wherever you have Saturn in your natal chart, okay? So because you have Saturn conjuncting your IC, that's probably your 4th house, in that situation, you're probably going to have a lot of karma when it comes to your home, okay? So it's interesting because you'll see Saturn in the 4th house people, maybe when they're younger, they leave the home at a young age, probably during a Saturn transit. They left, okay? But usually there's always something going on with the home where it's like you either go back into the home or maybe you're a caregiver or whatever is taking place because you're resolving karma surrounding the home and surrounding specifically the mother because it is the 4th house. If the roles are reversed, you're going to look at the dominant feminine role in your life, okay? So that is who you are resolving that karma with. Maybe you were raised by a grandparent, okay? So Saturn in the 4th house people, you know, it's interesting because part of their karma is to create, let's say, a home for themselves, okay? This is where you might very much, you know, flourish and blossom. But it's like, you know, Saturn in the 4th house also struggles with responsibility as well, okay? Because it's this, you know, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, but the way that I see it is like there's something in psychology called the Erickson model. And basically, I always talk about this when I talk about Saturn overall, but Saturn in the 4th house specifically. It's like you basically can get to the next stage in your life. This is based on their model. If you don't, quote unquote, graduate or clear, you know, a certain stage, right? So they kind of have life divided into stages. And as people, you know, grow and graduate from a stage, they kind of move on to the next stage. So for Saturn in the 4th house people, I find that and then they call it a crisis, okay? So then when you don't resolve this internal dilemma, internal issue, you enter into a crisis state, okay? Because then you can't move on to the next phase of your life if you haven't cleared that internal crisis. So you'll see this sometimes, right? Let's say a person has commitment issues. They are stuck in that crisis state, okay? So the internal crisis for the Saturn in the 4th house person is usually connected to responsibility and is usually connected to having too much responsibility as a young child. Thank you, Mio. That's such a compliment, but no. And then you have it opposing your moon. That's really interesting because Saturn opposing moon is usually tension between the parents, okay? Because moon being the mother, Saturn being the father, okay? If the roles are reversed, then you would look at it that way as well. Or dominant, feminine, masculine role in your life, okay? So when we have the oppositional energy going on there, maybe the mother wanted to raise you one way, the father wanted to raise you another way. Maybe there was tension here, okay? Saturn opposing moon can sometimes be parents, let's say, who got divorced. Again, it's opposing beliefs. So then you kind of have to see, like, how does that manifest within you? How does that affect your own internal masculine energy and your own internal feminine energy, okay? Because it's like, let's say with the moon energy in there, you could be someone who's like, I'm going to go with the flow. I'll go with the flow of life and feel into things, you know? And that could be true. But then you have the other opposing belief with Saturn being like, you have to work hard, you have to sit down, you have to hustle. Well, now it's opposing, right? So that's kind of like the vibe. You said you're 29, you're feeling Saturn square right now. You said that would be exactly, or would that be exactly 21 years old? You're gonna have to look at your transits to see if you are currently in your Saturn square. But usually it's around age 21. Like you'll notice, like people go through life-changing things. It's every 7 years, okay? So you're born around the age of 7, and then it lasts 3 years because the transit is 3 years, right? So then, you know, around the age of 7, around the age of 21, around the age of 28, like you're going through these Saturn transits. Yay, I'm so glad that that resonated. Yes, that's the whole thing here. So you always want to look at it how it's going to reflect within you energetically. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like sometimes I look at a natal chart and I see it as a potential, right? But then people sometimes get stuck in the wounding, right? Or the crisis, or, you know, I wanted it to go this way, but it didn't go that way. And then they got trapped in that, right? And it's kind of like an energetic loop. It's interesting. We were just talking about this earlier, about kind of like maybe bringing through, or just like somehow certain situations constantly like repeat themselves in your life. But at one point you can just kind of be like, I don't want to engage in this energy anymore, right? That's you detaching from the energy that's kind of in your chart. Current transits, honestly, I'm not even sure what's happening other than Saturn going direct and we are out of that eclipse energy. I'm so happy. Let's see, Claire says Venus trine Jupiter in general. What sign and house do you have everything in? Can you tell me, what do you have your Venus in? What house do you have your Venus in? What do you have your Jupiter in? What house do you have your Jupiter in? Venus in 10th house, Pisces. Oh, that's a nice Venus placement. Venus in the 10th house, you could also bring through abundance. So that's another abundance placement, okay? For you though, it's gonna be through something Venusian, which is interesting. You call yourself Venusia jewelry. I feel like you're in your lane, like where you're meant to be. Because Pisces, like Venus in Pisces is very good at anchoring anything that's dreamy, anything that is artistic, creative, like all these types of things, okay? So Venus is gonna bless you with abundance, especially because you have it in the 10th house. When you're in the Piscean world, it can also be metaphysics, it could be film, it could be theater, it could be romance, makeup, photography, all the things, okay? You have first house Virgo Venus, and then you have 5th house Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter in Capricorn, it's an interesting placement because it's like they say that it falls here, but I don't feel that way, to be honest. On this earth plane, I feel like Jupiter in Capricorn is very good at bringing through material things, at least. Like it falls here in the sense of spirituality because it's like Jupiter wants to expand, right? Jupiter wants to teach. It wants to teach spiritual things. But then it's like it's in Capricorn, where Capricorn is very logical and direct and all about climbing to higher heights, maybe making money, these types of things. So I don't know, with this placement, like first house Virgo Venus, and then you have the 5th house Jupiter Capricorn. You can make a lot of money through the self, maybe entrepreneurship if you're interested in that. Virgo Venus is a little bit of a struggle when it comes to relationships, though, I will say that much. You might struggle with like criticism. You're welcome. You might struggle with criticism when it comes to relationships, so keep that in mind. You might also take on projects. I find that Virgo people, this is like a chicken and the egg situation, okay? What happens with Virgo people is, you know, okay, I find that Virgo struggles with the solar plexus and the way where it's like they always want to be in control. So because of this, okay, and I'm not saying this is you, this is just Virgo energy overall, okay? So because of this, right, because they kind of feel like people can't do things as good as they can do it, and they kind of like, again, it's chicken or the egg. They feel like people are incompetent, but then they also attract incompetent people also into their life. So Virgo Venus can sometimes attract, like, first of all, projects or people you want to fix, okay? And also Virgo Venus can kind of fall in love with people's potential because it's like you're kind of tapping into the potential of the person, which is their higher self. So watch out for that. And then it's like when the person's not living up to that, you're constantly trying to fix them because you're trying to put them into what you saw them, right? So there's that struggle with Virgo Venus. And then the other struggle with Virgo Venus is you can kind of take on like dead weight types of people where it's like, see, this is what I mean by chicken or the egg. Sometimes the person in your life, like the Virgo person, again, wants everything done in a particular way, you know? And it's like, again, you know, I don't know if it's like because of the energy they attract incompetent people, or because they're so competent that everyone else appears to be incompetent around them. Like, I don't know which one it is. But because of this, right, because of this energy, it's like, you know, you might attract people who eventually kind of just like surrender. Aries Venus trine Sag Mars in the 4th house. Aries Venus 8th house, and then it's trining your Sag Mars in the 4th house. Very, very interesting. There's a lot of like hidden things that could come to the surface when you're in your relationships, and it's connected to the mother, I would say. That's what's going on in there. Or feminine energy overall, okay? The dominant feminine role in your life. There could be like manipulations that you might have to deal with when it comes to your relationships, or like struggles with like, you know, people covertly being manipulative emotionally, like things like this, okay? It could be this. Mars in the 4th house is a struggle, okay? Because it's like Mars wants to go, 4th house wants to chill, okay? So there's that. Aries Venus is good at bringing through money overall. And then you have Venus in the 8th house, which could potentially be another wealth placement, okay? The 8th house works with energy. So you'll find, you know, you'll find 8th house people in like occult types of things because they're trying to manipulate the energy to kind of get things faster, okay? You've definitely been trying them to approve, but they're open to it. That's good. You know, as long as, you know, everyone's happy and it's like all good to go, then that's all that matters at the end of the day. You might attract a lot of, okay, so when you have a lot of Virgo energy, you might attract a lot of Pisces people, or vice versa, okay? Or you might attract, like if you're a Piscean person, you might attract a lot of Virgo people. Oppositional energy, yes, but it's like the energies actually really work together. You said you and your 8th house moon at the casino, yeah. As 8th house energy, like 8th house energy is always trying to, you know, somehow trick, you know, the energy on this earth plane. But I find that the earth plane is very Saturnian, you know, so the karma of the earth plane is a struggle overall is really, really what that is. But yeah, 8th house people, I always say to them, you know, watch out for fast money, get rich quick schemes, anything that's like, you know, you can make money fast by doing this and by doing that. Definitely watch out for those things, okay? So that's like 8th house, like, you know, very like tempting, right, to go into that direction because they want to trick the energy, they want to manipulate it, they want to cut corners. And the thing is, like, what's the struggle is like, this is all possible. That's why it's a struggle for 8th house people. Like, all these things are possible, but down here we're very restricted energetically. I find it very Saturnian down here, like very, very like restrictive. You said you always hear that in your head, and when you see people with a lot of Scorpio energy, absolutely. You said Aries, 8th house Venus, trine, Sag, 4th house Mars, more positive than negative. I don't know. I don't really see astrology in positive and negatives. I just see it as like, it is what it is. Like, this is the energy overall in your natal chart, okay? So when you have Aries in the 8th house and it's in your Venus sign, hey, Bonita, how are you doing? You could make money, but you could also fall into wanting to make money fast, right? So you could be tempted to do gambling or whatever. So you kind of have to figure out a way to like engage that energy, but in like a way where maybe there aren't going to be losses. So like really educating yourself, let's say, about investments and like these types of things. Thanks for the follows. Thanks for the likes, you guys. You said Sun in the 8th house and whole sign as well. Yeah, Sun in the 8th house usually is kind of here to expose something to do with the father. So when I say expose, you know, it could be something covert, like maybe he has a pattern, right, that you're breaking through. Maybe he struggled with, let's say, like addiction, or maybe there's something hidden about him that you are bringing to the surface, right? You know, so things like this. 8th houser, you trigger people easily. Yes. You feel like your friendships turn into haters over time. Yeah. So it's interesting because, like, okay, 8th house people have a lot of magnetism. Okay, so this is a whole thing to understand, and it's really, really interesting because it's like, you know, a few things take place here. Sometimes people are jealous. Okay, so there's that aspect of it as well, where it's like people are envious, or it's like sometimes because you have a lot of magnetic sexual energy, you could attract a lot of things into your life, whether that is your opportunities, whether that is your partners, like whatever it is, right? So people around you might kind of envy that, right? So you could also feel a lot of envy energy from your friends. And then you said they turn into haters over time. It's just unfortunate is what it is that we're living in a time like this where it's like kind of rare to find people who are genuine. And then when you're an 8th house person, you pick up on it, right? So it's interesting because then on top of all of that, it's like the 8th house person is going to trigger people, right? So they're going to bring people's shadows to the surface, right? So maybe that person, you know, was never envious of anyone, let's say, and then you come through and you're kind of like shaking, you know, that energy within them, right? Because of your strength energetically, right? So it's all kind of happening energetically for 8th house people. And then it's like, I don't know, you might call things out that like to you is like very obvious. Maybe that person was trying to hide it, because you guys can look at like 8th house types of people as like uncovering hidden things, okay? They're kind of bringing hidden things to the surface, right? So whether that is, you know, openly, right? Or whether that is without you trying, or whether that is you just kind of like doing it mindlessly and you're just like saying things and it's coming out. So it's like, that's why it triggers people, right? Because a lot of people want to be hidden, you know? And it's interesting because the 8th house is that hidden house, one of the hidden houses, right? So it's like you're bringing all of these things to the surface. You can kind of look at it as like bringing people's, again, shadows, like, you know, the darkness within them to the surface. And then people don't like that. I'm glad that that resonates. Yeah, usually people don't like that. So there's that aspect of it as well, because it's like, it's a few things, you know, some people struggle with authenticity. Some people have not accepted themselves. Some people are not comfortable with the darkness and like their own dark traits and like these types of things. And it's like the 8th house person is very comfortable with these types of things. They're very aware of it. They have maybe transmuted it and these types of things. So you might attract these people into your life that are constantly running from themselves, right? And then you're a mirror, basically is what that is. You're like a mirror for them. I'm glad that that resonated. What are your thoughts on Saturn and the house your sun rules over? You have Saturn in your 3rd house as a Gemini sun. So it's interesting because I've noticed a lot of the time, things that people struggle with in their natal chart is actually part of their life purpose. So you yourself might struggle with speech, or you might struggle with like maybe learning or something of that sort, where it's like you might love learning, but you kind of have to figure out what your way of learning is, right? So the 3rd house is fast. So things that are like quicker, right? So like 2 times speed, you know, that could be a good way for you to get the information. If it's you sitting down and reading something that's dry, like it could be hard for you to absorb this information, and then that might translate in the physical reality into like struggles with learning, but it's like you don't learn that way, right? Because it's Mercury, right? 3rd house, Gemini is fast, right? So they need to learn things fast. Like for that type of energy, someone could just like press a button and they get the information in their head. It would be perfect. And then they want to move on to the next thing. And then they want to move on to the next thing. So Saturn's in here, right? So Saturn's restricting the 3rd house for you, but at the same time, it's something that you might be here to master. You might be here to speak, right? Or you might be here to write, or you might be interested in writing and speaking and poetry and these types of things. Welcome to all the people joining. You're welcome. You say 8th house, making the darkness fashion. What did you say? Virgo rising, opposition Pisces and Mercury in the 6th house. You don't attract people that have placements in your 8th house at all. That's good. Virgo rising, and then Virgo rising usually has like royalty vibes to them, because usually, it depends though, it depends. If your 12th house is occupied by Leo, you're gonna have royalty vibes, okay? If it's not occupied by Leo, you might not have that royalty energy within, but if your 12th house is Leo, then you are going to be carrying the royalty vibe within. Let's see if you answered. You didn't. Hey, what's going on? We're talking about astrology and metaphysics and natal charts. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Virgo rising opposing, so it's opposing your Mercury. So it's interesting because the way that you think and the way that you present yourself might not be, you know, going together, right? It might be opposite, right? So it's like, for example, you know, let's say like people who, let's say, talk online, right? And maybe they have very polarizing opinions. That might not be their own natural opinion, right? It might not be their own opinion. They might be just presenting that outward for the clicks, for the likes, for the attention, right? So this is an example of this energy where it's like, you know, it's opposing. So it's like what you actually think doesn't have to be what you're putting out there into the world. And that might confuse people, right? Because you might unconsciously do this. You might unconsciously present yourself in a way, right? And then you might think in a completely different way, right? So that's kind of like that opposition. I'm doing well. What are you researching? You said no, 8th, 12th house synastry, people come your way, but a lot of 5th and 7th house. That's nice. So that means you're not attracting a lot of like intense, like people who have maybe a lot of karma and like these types of things. So that's good. It's smooth sailing for you. You said your Sun's Mars and Sun is in the 10th house in Taurus. What career advice can you offer? Maybe something to do with banking. Anything that's very much in the physical reality, he's probably going to be really, really good at, and something that's like he's slowly climbing his way to the top. I don't know why banking was the first thing that I thought of, but yeah, he could probably like even go as far as like being the CEO of like a bank or like a financial institution or any business really. But it depends on the overall natal chart. 10th house people are going to be public people. So what I've noticed with the 10th house also is like when people have an abundance of 10th house energy, so I personally would say 2 or more placements in the 10th house, but usually stellium is 3 or more placements. But when you have an abundance of 10th house energy, it's like these people, I find that they tend to become very well known in their niche. So it's like if the person is a lawyer, they're going to become a very well-known lawyer, right? Also, because it's the 10th house, you might deal with high-end clients, right? So let's say he is in banking. Well, in that case, he might have clients who are millionaires, for example, right? Like high-end clients or like people who are very wealthy. He might be surrounded by these types of people. If it's not banking, if it's corporate, like whatever it is, the 10th house person, basically what happens to these people is like they tend to become very well-known in whatever niche they're in. Okay, so whether that is engineering or law or whatever, nursing, like that's kind of like the vibe. What did you tell him? You being a socialite. Hey, yeah, the energy is in there. So that's another thing too, you guys. It's like with astrology, if the energy is in there, you can take advantage of it. Okay, so I've noticed a lot of reality TV stars are in like, they tend to have like 10th house energy going on in their natal chart. You told him to consider being a lawyer. He's currently a car salesperson. He's currently a car salesperson. And then you said currently again. Yeah, so that's the thing. Another struggle with the 10th house is like sometimes these people are going to want to work for themselves. What I will say about 10th house energy though is like they're going to be very good at basically like surrounding themselves by wealthy people and then kind of learning from them to get into those positions eventually. Like they're willing to take on mentors. I'm just going back up. You said your husband and you are planning to move to Thailand. Oh, that's awesome. Where did you live before? Capricorn on the 9th house cusp, delayed education. Really, really interesting. Yes, karma when it comes to education. Thoughts on transiting Uranus. Thank you for the likes, you guys. Make sure you guys check out my YouTube channel. It's called Barbara Talks. You said thoughts on transiting Uranus and Jupiter conjunct natal Chiron that opposes Lilith. Can you tell me what house and sign you have everything in? Oh, you're currently in Texas. Really, really interesting. Let's see. You said you have Virgo, Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Venus in the 9th house. So for you, it's all about the higher mind. Well, there is where your interest in traveling abroad comes from, the 9th house. Okay. Perfect example. So 9th house people have to either go abroad, or if they can't go abroad, it's people from abroad coming to them, okay? So sometimes 9th house people are gonna end up in jobs where they're able to travel, right? So it depends, right? Let's say it's like a combination with 10th house or Capricorn energy. Well, in that case, you might be like a diplomat or something like this, where it's like international, right? International relations or like whatever it is, okay? And then you have Virgo, Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Venus. So you're probably really, really grounded in this earth plane. You told him, okay, I did this one. Let's see, I'm just going back up. Capricorn, rising, Uranus, Neptune. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of earth energy. So for you, like anything to do with like working hard and business, like you'll definitely be rewarded on this earth plane. Cancer, North Node in the 10th house. That's an interesting one, okay? Because it's like the North Node is your destiny in this lifetime, and then the South Node is where you've come from, okay? So you're on that 10th house, 4th house axis. So your past life in the 4th house Capricorn could have been more so behind the scenes. This time it's about being public, okay? Putting something out there. So in a past life, let's say like with the Capricorn in the 4th house, you could have been someone who like was like a lawyer or whatever, CEO. You worked in something that was maybe very corporate, and maybe you like created something, but it was behind the scenes, okay? So it's still serving the collective, but it was maybe behind the scenes, or maybe it was never seen. Maybe you now have this idea and now you're kind of being put out there, okay, is really what that is. You yourself are now here to be a public person, okay, with the 10th house. Cancer though, the struggle here with the Cancer, North Node in the 10th house is like you're going to absorb a lot of energy from being a public person. So you'll have to figure out a way to clear energy, cleanse your energy, you know, hone in maybe on something that you want to do so it's not scattered energetically. Like I find sometimes when we're kind of like doing a lot of things at once, you're overly scattered energetically and then it drains you more. So if you focus on one thing, like let's say you want to have like a cooking page, for example, those people who have like cooking pages and they have them on social media or online or whatever it is, very Cancer, North Node in the 10th house vibes, okay? Things like this. Saturn and Venus in the 10th house Pisces with your Saturn return in the 10th house, good or bad? Oh my gosh. Okay, every time I do a live, there is a theme, okay? So tonight's theme is 4th house, 10th house access and Saturn in the 10th house. There is a lot of you guys who have Saturn in the 10th house, okay? What I'm going to say about Saturn in the 10th house is this is a wealth placement, but in traditional astrology, Saturn in the 10th house is after the age of 35, you start to see the rewards of your wealth. Obviously, it depends on your whole natal chart. You will see people who have wealth from a young age, maybe they were born at 12, or again, depending on the whole natal chart, maybe they made a lot of money when they were young, okay? But overall, Saturn in the 10th house is the second half of your life. Usually they say after the age of 35, frequency of the planet is higher, so things can happen sooner, okay? With Saturn, the way that I see it is the sooner and faster you learn your Saturn karmic lessons, the sooner and faster it starts to reward you, okay? So you guys can look at Saturn as the area in your life that you're meant to master, okay? So you're meant to master money, you're meant to master climbing and getting to those higher heights, okay? But Saturn is over an extended period of time because Saturn rules time. Okay, so this is the important thing to understand. So it's like the more effort you put in towards working towards something, let's say you have your own jewelry business, I'm just guessing based off of your name, okay? So the more you put your energy into it and you work harder and you know, you really are all about maybe networking and climbing to higher heights and maybe getting your jewelry out there and meeting this person and that person and connecting with this person and that person, that's gonna help you climb, right? You can look at the 10th house Saturn Capricorn energy overall as the climber. You are climbing, okay? So for example, you have the free will to do what you want, but with that energy, it would be very beneficial to surround yourself with wealthy people, okay? Maybe someone who is already a jeweler, for example, who is where you want to be, get in contact with them, network with them, and then meet their friends, okay? That's the vibe. So it's interesting because it's like there's wealth in the chart, right? But it's delayed, okay? Not delayed. I don't like using the word delayed because I think everyone's like on their own trajectory and their own life path. But that's the thing with Saturn. It makes you kind of work for it and it's over an extended period of time. And Saturn energy is always like, how bad do you want something? So it keeps knocking you down, right? But you're meant to master that. Now, what I will also say for Saturn in the 10th house as well is that usually here with the money and the belief systems around money, it's connected to the home and the mother and the IC, okay? Because that energy is opposing your IC. It's karmic, okay? So to get a better idea of what's happening, we would have to look at your 4th house and your IC to see what could be potential, you know, belief systems and things that are holding you back from coming into that Saturn in the 10th house potential. You struggle with your Saturn in the 9th house. You have Taurus Saturn in the 9th house. So you just finished your Saturn opposition it was a Saturn square last year. The 9th house. Sometimes people, out of all the Saturn placements, like Saturn in the 9th house isn't too bad. Sometimes you might have fears around travel, or you didn't travel for a long time, or you didn't travel at all when you were a kid and then you start traveling later on. These are some things that can take place. But yeah, Saturn in the 9th house is like, again, it's over an extended period of time, right? You're kind of here to create a belief system of your own, but that could take a while, right? You might go off on a journey and a quest, kind of like Eat, Pray, Love vibes, right? And you create a belief system for yourself, usually connected to philosophies, the higher mind, higher learning, and these types of things. Let's see, what else are you guys saying in here? What do you think about Moon Mars and Moon Venus synastry aspects? Okay, Moon Mars is intense. Depends who is who in the Moon Mars dynamic, okay? So, and it depends what kind of relationship it is. If it's romantic and let's say it is a heterosexual relationship, okay? And the moon person is a woman and the Mars person is a man, that synastry is gonna be intense because it's like the Mars person sometimes really even wants to impregnate, okay, the moon person just to keep them around. Like the Mars person really wants to keep the moon person around, and this relationship can very much go into traditional masculine, traditional feminine role, where it's like the moon person is really nurturing the Mars person really likes that, okay? So it can go into this direction, but it doesn't matter whether it's heterosexual or not. That's kind of like the, I guess you can say, extreme playing out energy of this. Regardless, the Mars person is going to want to keep the moon person around, regardless of whatever relationship this is, okay? So keep that in mind, because it's like the moon person is emotionally connecting to their Mars, right? To their ambition, to their drive, right? And then that's fueling the Mars person, right? So keep this in mind. It depends on the rest of your natal chart as well, okay? Moon to Venus is very nice. This is a Venusian type of dynamic, okay? So it's like you guys can really indulge together, you know, where it's like you guys can really go on like fancy vacations and fancy experiences, and you guys can like maybe go to like fancy events, like whatever it is, right? Because that's that Moon to Venus, right? Where it's like, it's indulgent. It could be this type of dynamic, okay? And you guys can very much like anchor things through Moon and Venus. That could be a very good like manifesting together type of dynamic, okay? I have more information on my YouTube channel actually about moon synastry. If you guys are interested, it is under the synastry playlist. So I have all the moon placement synastries in there. Let's see if you guys want even more depth. You said you're the moon person in both, so you're going to be affected more. I find that with moon synastry, whoever has the moon is affected more than the other person, okay? Because it's affecting your emotional world. It can be positive, like Moon to Venus is very positive. Moon to Moon is very positive. Moon to Mars can be intense. It can even be karmic in a way, right? Where it's like push-pull. Moon to Pluto, stay away, okay? Moon to Pluto is going to be Plutonian. It's going to be intense. I love you. I hate you. I want to be with you. I don't want to be with you. Even if it's a friendship, like obviously depends again on the rest of the synastries in the chart. But yeah, so that's kind of like the whole thing here. Yeah, I'm so glad that it resonates. You say you feel like the black sheep of your family when it comes to positive views of money. Yeah, you know, it's really, really interesting because I've been thinking about how a lot of like, I mean, I feel like we already know this, like a lot of beliefs are placed upon us, like they might not even be our own. And then when we look at like generational things, like this is for everybody. When we look at like, you know, like the time that maybe your parents lived in and then their parents, it's like, you know, things worked for them for the time that they lived in, right? But within these past, not even like, what is it, like 3 years, 10, 15, like whatever it is, right? Like within these past years, we've gone through like rapid, right, change and acceleration. So because of that, it's like things that work for them aren't going to work for you. Do you know what I mean? And especially it's not going to work, right? Because it's like, you know, some of them, you know, were kind of like born when the computers just came out and whatever. And now we're like doing all these things with tech. It's like, we've been going through a rapid like change, right? So yeah, there's going to be a lot of clash probably when it comes to belief systems. You said Uranus, Jupiter transit in Taurus, conjunct Chiron, Taurus, opposing Lilith, not you, an opponent. Oh my gosh, I'm dying. You called it an opponent. I'd have to see that. I'd have to see what's going on like in front of me, like physically. Let's see, so I can focus on the energy. You struggle with your Saturn. You said you have 9th house Taurus, 3rd house Scorpio. Forgot to add that. You have Saturn transiting your 4th house. You were thinking of upgrading your house. No, that's very much Saturn and the 4th house vibes. Saturn transiting your 4th house is always something to do with the home, right? So whether you are kind of like rebuilding what home means to you, it could be this, right? Whether you are maybe younger and you're going back to live with your parents, that's Saturn in the 4th house transit. So yeah, I mean, why not? If you're feeling called to do it, why not? Yeah, I'd have to look at it like physically on a piece of paper and actually focus on it to see what comes through. You're welcome. Not even paper, just like physically in front of me, even on the computer. Let's see, what else are you guys saying in here? Exactly in the middle of your Saturn square, and it's actually been really empowering. Yeah, because the thing is, Saturn, I see Saturn, this is my opinion on Saturn, okay? I see Saturn as coming through, clearing up things that don't serve you and that aren't in alignment with your purpose anymore. That's how I see it, right? So I think because humans are creatures of habit and comfort, they want to hold on, right? And then when change comes through and knocks on their door, well, people don't want to let go of things, right? But if you go with the flow and you let Saturn do its thing, it's definitely going to be a blessing and it's going to put you on your path where you're meant to be on, okay? So keep this in mind. So anytime you go through any sort of Saturn cycle, okay, we go through Saturn cycles every 7 years. So every 7 years, something is going to change. And you know what's actually really interesting? Also, one time, I don't know if this is true or not, this is what I heard a long time ago, maybe this changed because these days, every like information is changing. But I heard once that every 7 years your hair changes. So it changes like the texture and it changes whatever. So it's interesting because once again, Saturn cycle, you know, we have this 7 number happening everywhere. Thanks for the likes, you guys. Let's see. You've been wanting to move, but the market is crazy high. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if that's still a thing. I heard that so long ago. Like maybe it's been like 15 years now. Let's see. Aquarius moon in the 6th house squaring Taurus. Thanks so much for the likes, you guys. Make sure you check out my YouTube channel. It's called Barbara Talks. You said Aquarius moon in the 6th house and is squaring Taurus in the 9th house Saturn. So much Saturn energy in the house tonight. So you have your moon squaring your Saturn. So any sort of moon conjunct, anything to do with moon square Saturn, this is like mother father, okay? So this is like when you have moon squaring Saturn, mother wants to do this, father does this, okay? So, and how's that going to affect your own internal masculine feminine energy? It's going to affect, you know, your feminine energy, and it's going to affect your masculine energy. So feminine is maybe your intuition, your, you know, emotional world, because it's in the moon, and then it's squaring, which is like maybe the authority, maybe your managers, maybe your teachers, right? So you're always going to find yourself in this tension, okay? It could even be like your intuition versus like the physical reality, right? So you're always going to find yourself, right? This is happening and that's happening, okay? So that's kind of like that moon aspecting Saturn in any way, okay? There's always something going on with the mother and the father, and then in turn, your masculine and feminine energy within, okay? Moon in the 6th house. I mean, moon in the 6th house, you're a healer for sure. You're probably going to be interested in healing professions, anything to do with like nursing, anything to do with like maybe Reiki, like whatever it is, because it is an Aquarius. It's going to be something that's like futuristic, okay? Something that is ahead of its time. You're kind of anchoring it into this physical plane and into this physical reality. Saturn in Taurus is really interesting because I find that Saturn in Taurus goes one of 2 ways, okay? Because Saturn is karma and it's the father. Usually the belief systems around money are connected to the father. So you either karmically incarnate with positive belief systems when it comes to money, or you're meant to master money in this lifetime, okay? So that's kind of like the karma with Saturn and Taurus. Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for the popcorn. Thank you for the whipped coffee. You said, Barbs, are you all obsessed with buying a house, etc.? Everyone here is in New Zealand. No, I'm not. Let's see, what else are you guys saying in here? Let's see, one of you guys said, I'm trying to find your, okay, you said Saturn in the 11th in Taurus. So if you're still in the room, basically what I was saying to the other individual about Saturn in Taurus is going to apply to you as well, okay? Now we have to look at the whole natal chart to see what's going on, okay? Because, you know, it's going to tell us more information about what's happening with the mom, what's happening with the dad, right? Saturn and moon, like I was mentioning to the person earlier. But I don't know, I'm curious to know because I keep seeing Scorpio. So I'm curious to know if you have Scorpio energy in your natal chart. I keep seeing oppositional energy taking place in your natal chart. So let me know if you're still in the room, if you have Scorpio energy in your natal chart, and is it opposing the Taurus and Saturn that you have, okay? A Saturn in the 11th house, this is you being ahead of your time when it comes to your ideas, and now you're mastering the timing of when to pitch your ideas, okay? You said you have Taurus is in the 11th house, but can you tell me, do you have Scorpio anywhere in your natal chart? And if you do, I mean, if you're saying you have, you said every time you open my live, I'm talking about Scorpio. Is this a sign? I think it's like your vibe attracts your tribe, because I have a bunch of Scorpionic energy. I notice a lot of the time, sometimes you guys share placements with me. There's always a synastry happening also between you guys and my natal chart as well. Your vibe attracts your tribe. Let's see, I'm going back up. Okay, so Saturn and Taurus, what I was saying earlier, right? So you either incarnate with the belief systems around money that are positive, okay, and it's on the father's side, okay? If it's not the father, dominant masculine role in your life, this person teaches you about money. And it's interesting because for Saturn and Taurus people, basically your ability to make money is connected to your self-worth, okay? So Saturn and Taurus people are kind of struggling with self-worth, okay? That's the whole thing here. You're trying to find your solar plexus is really what that is. Okay, and then when you have that, you'll bring through the abundance. So it's karmic, okay? Usually over an extended period of time. And then the 11th house is also you sharing your ideas, but trying to figure out when to pitch them, right? Because you're going to be ahead of your time in terms of your mind. You said you have Saturn and Gemini, but Scorpio's in your 5th house. You have no Scorpio placements. Let's see. What if his Venus in Pisces is in your Lilith in Pisces? Definitely shadow work coming up in your relationship, and probably you're going to be bringing it out in him. Let's see. You have Saturn in Gemini. That's interesting because you said Taurus up here. One second. Welcome, welcome, welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts. So if you guys have any questions, thanks so much for the likes, you guys. If you're new here, check out my YouTube channel. It's called Barbara Talks. You said, what could transiting Saturn, Neptune conjunction do if it's opposing one's sun? Yeah, patience, you're going to definitely need during this time, and then you don't see your identity clearly. That's something. Okay, so I've been thinking, it's interesting. I've been thinking about Neptune's influence in a natal chart in terms of the aspects. So when you have it aspecting either your sun, which is your ego and your identity, or you have it aspecting your ascendant, you don't see yourself clearly, okay? This is in a few ways. Maybe you don't see how awesome you are, right? Or what a great person you are, or you don't physically see yourself clearly, right? So those are some things that can take place, okay? And then it's karmic. So Saturn, because it's time, right? You're basically going to have to be patient during the transit is really what that is. Maybe some things are going to be revealed to you about yourself that you didn't know, because again, it's Neptune. Neptune blurs, okay? That's the whole struggle. Sagittarius and Aries compatible. I would say yes. You're both going to be fiery. You guys might be like impulsive. You guys might be like a type of dynamic where it's like, oh my gosh, do you want to go to Bali today? Yeah, let's go. Like you're gonna feed into each other's isms in that way. Jupiter transit 12th house, you are truly spiritually protected right now. Yeah, I mean, why not? Honestly, at the end of the day, in terms of spiritual protection, I do feel like it is in our hands, you know what I mean? So it's really up to us to just like figure out how can we close our aura, what can we do to protect ourselves, and then like kind of strengthen, right, that relationship with the divine, the creator, God, whatever term you want to use. Because it's like, the way that I see it, this is just my own opinion, I feel like if you are living in your own truth and it's something positive and you're a nice person and you are, again, like basically just being a good person is really what that is. I feel like you are protected, right? If you're doing shady, shadowy things, you know, you'll notice people who are shady and shadowy are always paranoid because they know they're doing something shady and shadowy, right? And sometimes people have these shadow traits that sometimes are a defense mechanism, right? For whatever reason, let's say someone lies, right? Like, why is the person lying? These types of things, right? So it's like, that's why we want to integrate these things, because like the higher up you go in your chakras, in your own journey and the healing, you know, you kind of close up that aura, right? You close it up and then you're automatically protected because you're just in those higher vibrations. No worries. What do I think about Saturn, Neptune? Oh, I thought I answered your question, but then you added through the 4th house. So you said you have Saturn, hold on one second. You said you have Saturn, Neptune conjunction, and it's going, transiting Saturn, Neptune conjunction, and it's going through the 4th house. So karma around the home, okay? Maybe things that you never saw clearly when it came to the home are coming to the surface now to be looked at, to be explored. Maybe addictive tendencies are coming to the surface to be looked at and explored that are patterns within the family line. Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. That's good. You're welcome. I'm glad that your questions are coming out. So that's kind of the vibe here, okay? Because Neptune blurs, Saturn restricts, okay? So this is an intense kind of conjunction taking place here, okay, if you really think about it. And then it's going through your 4th house, which is your home. So it's like you might be rebuilding your foundations during this time, okay? Maybe there were things around the home when you were younger that you thought were one way, and now you're seeing maybe it clearly without like the veil over your eyes, right? The fog has been lifted. When there is a lot of Scorpio energy in one's chart, is this dealing with inherited past life karma? Fairy goddess, where are you? We're talking about Scorpio energy again. So when you said when there's a lot of Scorpio energy in one's chart, is this dealing with inherited past life trauma? Oh, you said karma. It's interesting I said trauma. Interesting, okay? So that's not a slip. That's always like coming through. When it comes through that way, like it comes through for a reason. So what happens with Scorpio energy? Okay, what happens with Scorpio energy? Yes, it's a few things that are taking place here. You can kind of look at Scorpio as like the generational cycle breaker, okay? So you're kind of the one that comes through and you're seeing everything that's been swept under the rug, things that have been hidden, patterns, issues, XYZ, okay? That's Scorpio energy overall, right? So yes, okay, it doesn't have to be inherited from a past life. This is what I've been thinking about lately as well. It's like sometimes it's just so far back in the generations that it is kind of from this lifetime, but you're clearing it for the generation in that way. But yes, it could be past life, but it could also be this life, or it could just be generational from super, super far back. Regardless, okay, whichever one it is, you are clearing karma overall, okay, with the scorpionic energy. You're clearing shadows, you're clearing things that are hidden, maybe addiction, addictive tendencies, things like limerence, obsession, paranoia, shadowy traits. Sometimes Scorpios can struggle with lying themselves, okay? They can be in that shadow too. Keep this in mind, okay? Because it's like, it's interesting to see the scorpionic energy, how it can play out when it's in the shadows. Keep in mind, Scorpio goes through, some people say 7, I just say 3, it's just easier, okay? So 3 cycles, right? They go through the little scorpion when they kind of have that stinger, okay? That's when you're in the lowest version of Scorpio. Then you go through the eagle, which is like, you're kind of seeing things from a higher perspective, and then boom, you're in the phoenix where you've transmuted all of these lower things. So you might be dealing with a lot of shadow things throughout your life, okay? That might not have even been your own, is really what that is. So that's what I was saying earlier also, or at least what I started saying was like, something that I've been thinking about is like, I feel like a lot of things that people are clearing or dealing with aren't even their own, but they've kind of internalized them as their own. I hope that makes sense. You said, yes, that happens. What houses do you look for the mother and father in the chart? You hear conflicting things. 4th house versus 10th house. It's interesting. This is the way that I learned it. I learned it as 4th house is the mother, 10th house is the father, okay? So moon is the mother, and then you have Saturn. Okay, you can look at Saturn for the father. You can look at Sun for the father. You can also look at Mars for the father, okay? If it's not the father, it's a dominant masculine role in your life. And same thing, if it's not the mother, it's a dominant feminine role in your life, okay? I've heard some people say that it's actually the reverse. Regardless, okay, you can look at it as masculine energy, feminine energy. 4th house is feminine energy. The 10th house is the masculine, authoritative type of energy. So when you're clearing and healing things, you want to see what's happening in the feminine energy line. So it could be something coming from the dad side, but it's from the feminine energy, okay? I have compartmentalized the energies in a way that just makes sense to me. Feminine energy is like intuition, creativity. Feminine energy is all about being patient and nurturing. Like that's feminine energy to me, okay? Then you have masculine energy, which is the container for the feminine. The feminine energy gets the idea. The masculine energy puts it into action. If you're too much in the feminine, you have all these ideas, you don't know how to put them into action. That's shadow feminine energy, okay? Or if you're too much in the masculine, you could be too much in the day-to-day and you're not in tune with your intuition. That's kind of how the energies work together. So you want to balance these energies within. When you're looking at balancing the energies, you always want to look at the original 2 caregivers, mother, father. If they weren't there, then you have to see what's going on with that as well. 4th house can deal with abandonment. 4th house can deal with emotional abandonment, anything to do with the feelings and the emotions. That's also the feminine energy, the way that I see it. The feminine is the feeling, okay, within the self. It's the heart space. It's the love, the unconditional love, okay? So that's really what that is, okay? So that is the feminine energy, and then the masculine is here to contain, okay? Energetically, they kind of create a structure. Energetically, that's kind of the vibe, okay? Being a go-getter, going after things. Again, this is the energy within the self, okay? So if you're struggling in any of these energies, you kind of want to see what's going on with my masculine energy, what's going on with my internal feminine energy. Depends what you're trying to do, right? And again, you can look at feminine energy as just being, masculine energy is doing, okay? So when you're sitting and you're, thinking of an idea, maybe you want to write a book, you're in your feminine, right? Because you're thinking about it. But if you're too much in that thinking and you're like, oh, it could be like this and it could be like that, you need to reel it in and put in the masculine to actually start, right? So that's kind of how the energies work together. That's how I see it. Placements that are manifestation in astrology. That is really, really an interesting question. Okay, so 12th house, Neptune, Pisces is very good at manifesting. This is the way that I see it, but they can struggle. So everything that I just said when I went on my tangent about masculine, feminine energy, Pisces and 12th house, Neptunian is too much in the feminine, okay? So they have to learn how to reel it in and focus on their masculine energy to ground, to actually put it into action. Because when you put your visualization along with an action in the physical reality, boom, you're manifesting left, right, and center, okay? If you think you're gonna sit in your house and write it on a piece of paper and hold it and put it under your bed every night and think about it every single day, that's not how manifestation works. Unfortunately, not on this earth plane. So we are restricted with rules on this earth plane. That's what a lot of people need to understand, okay? So you can have your little paper and be like, okay, recite it 5 times every day, it's gonna come through. But for you to actually manifest, you have to take your little paper, look at what you wrote down on it, and actually put it into action, okay? Because the best, not the best, but like the simplest example, I guess, that everybody could relate to is, you know, going after a job, right? If you want a job, you're rarely gonna be sitting in your house and someone's gonna knock on your door and be like, hey, here's a job. That doesn't happen that way, right? So everyone knows if you want a job, you put out the resume, you go to the interview, all these things, but you've put the action, okay? So this is how you can start energetically manipulating things, right? I always think to myself, right? Do I want to activate that vibration for that thing? And this is gonna go in the positive and the negative sense as well, because again, wherever energy goes and attention goes, right, the energy flows, or whatever that saying is. So it's like, it's a little bit more metaphysical, I guess, but the basis of it is, you know, you have your thought and then you act on it. So 12th house is gonna be good at manifestation because they have the visualization, but they have to work on the action part of it, okay? 8th house can be very good, but 8th house, I feel like it's interesting because the 8th house energy can also deal with karma sometimes. So the 8th house can kind of get lost in the shadows with like trying to manipulate energetically, and then the karma can kind of catch up with them of the plane. So they can be good at manifesting, but they can also struggle at the same time because they're trying to cut corners, I find, with 8th house energy. And once again, there's rules on this plane. What I will say about 8th house energy is if they can learn how to hone their sexual energy properly, which is a whole story of its own, if they could do that, boom, manifesting left, right, center, okay? So I would say those are the main ones. But again, it's up to the person, right? Like it really depends on the person. I think anybody can tap into these things. It doesn't really matter on your natal chart. Let's see what's going on in your natal chart. Thoughts on Aquarius rising with Pluto about to enter your first. You're gonna go through a lot of change and a lot of transformation of the self, but over an extended period of time, okay? So keep this in mind. It's over an extended period of time. That's the whole thing here because Pluto is a long transit, okay? So remember who you are today, and then when Pluto transit is done, you're probably gonna be someone completely different, okay? But that's just life also, we go through these changes. You said, how is Mars square Pluto in synastry? That can be very like sexually intense and like attractive and magnetic and like, you know, again, you can't stay away from each other, but it can also be very explosive. It can also be very argumentative, okay? It can also go into that shadow. It can be very karmic in this way as well, where you're kind of drawn and, you know, you can't stay away from each other. It can be in that way as well. Mars square Pluto, I'm trying to think what else. There could just be like games that take place here, like, you know, the Pluto person could, you know, psychologically try to play games with like the Mars person. There could be conflict, right? Because Mars is that Aries energy and Pluto is Scorpio, right? And both of them, like Scorpio used to be ruled by Mars, so it's like the god of war. So there could be a lot of conflicts. There could be a lot of ego in this relationship as well. I'm gonna say it depends how evolved the energy is. I'm gonna sign off. Thanks for being here. Check out my YouTube channel. It's called Barbara Talks. Thank you for the questions, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your evening.